Welcome to the latest Motley Fool scoreboard. I'm on Balloon. We've got longtime fools Travis Hoyam and Dan Kaplinger giving a 1 to 10 rating to a top 200 stock in the primary hidden gems database. It's Amazon, ticker symbol AMZN. You know it, you love it. We might not be scoring it as high as you'd think, though. We'll rate the strength of Amazon's business first, including factors like industry and competition. A 10 is invincible, a 1 is hopeless. Start off pretty strong with Travis at a 7. Dan, you're at a 9.
Yeah, I really like this business on it. It's a great combination. You know, it's easy to think of companies as just being like one big thing. And for sure, Amazon's e-commerce, it grabs consumers really at the top of the sales funnel, gets them into the ecosystem. But I think a lot of people are surprised at what they find once they get in there. Amazon Prime started out being just quick delivery, but now it's kind of Amazon's ecosystem. It's where it tries out new things. It grabs recurring revenue. It tries to lock people in, make switching costs higher, and it's done a good job with that. Same time, Amazon Web Services over on the tech side, taking advantage of all kinds of tech innovation, higher margin business than retail, obviously. And frankly, Amazon would already be doing all this stuff for its internal operations. It's essentially just getting other people to pay for what it would have had to pay itself for anyway. I like that kind of business model. I think it bodes well for Amazon.
Yeah, I think if you look backward, Amazon was really well positioned over the last 30 years, really, since the company was founded. But let's look forward. The retail growth is slowing. They're fighting AI trends. They just had an announcement this week that they won a court battle against Perplexity, basically scraping their data. So if we're going to AI agents, Amazon appears that they're not going to be one of the winners if we're going to be doing our shopping that way. They're dependent on advertising, $68 billion in advertising revenue over the past year. You can think about that as sucking margin away in revenue away from your suppliers, because most of those are third-party suppliers on their platform. So the numbers look really good in retail. I just wonder if this is going to be a business that's built to grow in the future the way that it has in the past. And look, AWS is what most of the businesses, the tech businesses, were built on over the past 20 years. Over the next 20 years, this is not a leader in artificial intelligence. So if AI is the future, there are other clouds that I would rather be in, Microsoft Azure, in particular, Google's GCP. I just think AWS is kind of the lowest of the hyperscalers in that sense.
For management, a 10 is Warren Buffett, a 1 is Homer Simpson. Some differences here too. Travis is at a 6, Dan, you're at an 8.
Yeah, Andy Jassy, not particularly inspiring. Nobody's going to accuse him of having Jeff Bezos' charisma, but I think he does have his finger on the tech side of the business. That seems to me to be the higher growth area. It's probably more important than, nobody was going to be able to follow up Jeff Bezos as far as personality was concerned. And so not even trying, I think that's not a bad strategy for Jassy.
Yeah, I got to go pretty low here. Over-invested during the pandemic. That was his decision to be building out data centers and capacity. That's why they went to negative cash flow. They were late in investing in artificial intelligence, arguably still kind of behind in that space. I'm gonna put out a really rough comparison here. Is Jassy this generation's Steve Ballmer?
And will he bring an NBA team back to Seattle? For financials, a 10 is a fortress, a 1 is yikes. Travis is at a 7, Dan, you're at an 8.
Yeah, it's important, I think, when you're looking at Amazon's financials to understand. You just look at headline numbers company-wide, it's really hard to look at it. You really have to break things up into the segments in order to get a sense of what is going on because, frankly, the retail business looks a lot different from what the tech business looks like. But overall, you're seeing good growth. There's plenty of profitability, which is something we couldn't say about Amazon, 20, 25 years ago. I would just prefer not to see the levels of debt rising as much as they have been lately, and I kind of knock them a couple of points for that.
Yeah, the debt's rising, and free cash flow is probably going to go negative in 2026. So I also don't like the debt. I think you got a pretty tough margin business in the retail business. So the fact that, they talk a lot about the advertising business, but that's really just squeezing margin out of their suppliers. So I just think that the financials, as good as they've looked over the last few years and the trends that they've had over the past few years, the trends in the future may not be quite as good.
All right, Travis, let's talk valuation then. How well will Amazon stock do over the next 5 years? How safe is it? 10's a sure thing, 1's a lottery ticket.
Look, Amazon's not going anywhere. So I set pretty modest expectations here, 5 to 10%, put a safety score of 6. I think some of these risks with artificial intelligence, things like shopping agents, if that is the future, I got lots of questions about that. But if that is the future, is Amazon really well positioned? Same thing with their AWS versus some of these other cloud services. So it just went pretty low on that safety score.
Yeah, I matched those returns. I do think Amazon's kind of become the out of favor player in tech now. That was Alphabet a couple of years ago. Alphabet has caught up. Real question for me is whether all this massive spending on AI infrastructure, whether it pays off or whether competitors end up disrupting Amazon. Certainly the company is betting on the answer being yes, that Amazon will be a big winner. That's why I think I gave his safety score as low as I did of 6.
Thank you to both Dan and to Travis. They've given Amazon an all right overall score of 6.7 out of 10, and both prefer Alphabet as a top it, even despite its strong performance over the last year. I was a little surprised at how low Amazon was, but I see where they're going. Look out for a new scoreboard every market day at 7 p.m. Eastern. Next up is Rambus. Till then, Fool on.